Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 7th episode of Ask a Counselor. I'm Missy Petty.
I'm Kelley Navar.
And I'm Christine McMinn.
Today, we're going to talk about self-esteem. Self-esteem is a dense, broad topic, but what we hope to do today is talk to you about some basic or introductory concepts to help get you started if this is something that you're struggling with or something you've struggled with over time. I think Kelley's going to get us started today.
Yep. So oftentimes when I'm talking to somebody about self-esteem and working on that, we kind of start to uncover that maybe they're setting some unrealistic expectations of self. So I really like to work first on setting some realistic goals. So a really oversimplistic example of setting an unrealistic goal and replacing it with a realistic goal is, let's say I'm going to start working out and I decide I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to go 5 days a week. And that's probably an unrealistic goal if I've not belonged to a gym for a while. And so then if I don't go those 5 times, I'm going to get really down on myself. And then it's going to be less motivating to do anything else further than that or to actually achieve that goal. So I actually really encourage people to almost, when they're goal setting, to almost set super easy, very achievable goals, something that almost seems too simple, and then work their way up. Obviously, the example that I gave is super simplistic and very easy. We would get into more complex goals. The last thing that I want to say is that I really encourage people to go into goal setting and realistic goal setting with a sense of curiosity. It's a very gentle approach. That way, with a sense of curiosity, you get to mess up. You get to not achieve goals and get to look at that and say, how could I do this differently, or what way could this work in a way that is more effective for me?
That's great. And I think too, like you said, Kelley, when you go in with those expectations, you don't go in from an already harsh place. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit, is that for so many people, when they're struggling with their self-esteem, whether they're aware of it or not, their voice when they talk to themselves about themselves, which I call the narrator, right? Their narrator has a really harsh, really negative tone. It's quick to judgment. It doesn't even blink an eye. So if you didn't make it to the gym 5 times, like, I'm such a loser, I can't stick to anything, and it goes right to that place. So I think, the 2 parts I want to talk about are, one, really paying attention to the language you use when you talk to yourself about yourself, really paying attention to whether or not it's harsh, it's critical, if it gets to that place in the blink of an eye, and then really working to kind of take a step back and reframe that language or that situation to bring it to a more like objective or neutral place. Ultimately, you want to get to a much kinder place, which I'll let Christine get into, but I think the first step is really giving yourself the space to be more neutral about it, to say, this is new for me and I'm trying, or I made the best effort that I could, or I'm trying something new and I'm struggling, which feels true and doesn't feel like too much of a leap, but is also filled with far less judgment and is a much more neutral and objective way to replace that narrator's harsh tone.
So then kind of building off of that a little bit, kind of that first step that Kelley described of kind of setting those realistic expectations, that next step Missy was talking about of kind of shifting into neutral out of that harsh negative place, is once you're in that neutral space, is then kind of looking to shift into a really positive space, a place kind of filled with self-love. And so, along those same lines of thinking about the narrator, sometimes it's helpful to kind of think of it like a positive narrator and a not so positive narrator. Sometimes I'll use the phrasing of like a critical voice, which is that exact same narrator that is just beating up on us, versus an advocate voice or a self-love voice. And so a way to kind of think about, what is Christine talking about when she's describing that is, if you think about maybe a really good friend of yours, or a family member, somebody that you have a really close, loving relationship with, and just the way that they talk to you when they're happy with you, when they're maybe not so happy with you. There's typically that love infused to all of it. Even if they're not so happy with you, when you're not so happy with yourself or something that's going on or there's a disappointment, the idea of really still continuing to be kind and compassionate towards yourself versus beating yourself up, because that just makes us feel worse and sends us down that rabbit hole of listening to that negative narrator voice. So it's really about cranking the volume on that positive voice. Another kind of strategy you can use with that is thinking, if a friend was saying this to me, how would I feel about it? But also potentially giving yourself a nickname, like a term of endearment, something that you maybe, call those that you love, something that you can use with yourself, because it just kind of keeps that voice in check. The other resource I want to share with you guys, there's two of them. One I reference a little bit more frequently is just a book that's called The Self-Esteem Companion by Matthew McKay. And there's a couple other wonderful authors on there, but he's the primary author. It's a small little book. It's on my bookshelf at the office. I've actually got a couple copies of it. It has lots of great exercises in there on this topic. And then there's another book just called Self-Esteem by the same author, Matthew McKay. And it reads a little bit more like a textbook. So if you're really looking to dive into things, that's a great read. If you're looking for some practical exercises, the Self-Esteem Companion is a great resource.
Well, thank you all for continuing to watch our series. As most of our videos, this is really meant to be an introductory look into self-esteem work. Obviously, if you're looking to do more of a deeper dive or have some further questions about this as it relates to you or your loved one's cancer experience or your grief, please feel free to email us at counseling@livingwellcrc.org. Thanks again.